Creative strategists are sports players. The very top tier, guaranteed you're gonna make millions of dollars.
What are you passionate about right now? Like what's big in creative strategy?
It would be hard not to answer that question with AI automating creative strategy.
Brett Friedman is one of the leading creative strategists in DTC, known for shaping growth at brands like True Classics, Hims, and Igloo.
Creative strategy is not just producing ads, and it's also not just looking at what's going viral on TikTok. We're seeing a lot of the technology being used to do the end result. Let's create some actual ads.
After honing his craft at Common Thread and Ready Set, he now runs his own agency at the forefront of how AI is transforming creative strategy.
The problem with AI is as soon as you ask it to aggregate it into some kind of a sentiment in general, it just flattens everything.
There are parts of what people do for creative research that are completely useless. The biggest thing that people do is they'll just copy other brands' ads. If you want something to be really, really good creative, you want to custom tailor that concept to I really, really want the full automation of once this thing has working memory of your entire life, every decision of it will be part.
Brett, pleasure to have you on. I've known you for a few years now. You're somebody I truly respect in the creative strategy field, in e-commerce. I always watch your posts on LinkedIn and always have a giggle when you post something because you're very matter of fact. I think we have a very similar vibe because we just enjoy kind of commenting on the same things. You work with brands like True Classics, Hims, Igloo, some of the top brands in the DTC space. I know you grew up in two of the, agencies that, I definitely respect, Common Thread and then Ready Set. And now you're doing your own thing at Creative Strategy Agency. So just hit me straight away. What are you passionate about right now? Like what's big in creative strategy? Like what are you working on?
Yeah, it would be hard not to answer that question with AI automating creative strategy. But I want to nuance that answer because I think what a lot of people miss is that creative strategy is not just producing ads. And it's also not just looking at what's going viral on TikTok. And when I see a lot of the tech that's being developed right now in the space, most of it is targeting one specific part of the creative strategy process. So we're seeing a lot of the technology being used to do the end result, right? Let's create some actual ads. Let's create some actual assets. VO3, for example, is wonderful. And we're also seeing a lot of automation on the very first step, which is creative research. So we're seeing a lot of people creating these NEN flows that are grabbing things from TikTok and they're grabbing things from Reddit and using those to boil down into pain points and then, coming up with concepts out of that. And of course you have Foreplay and Atria and now Magic Brief, who just got acquired, which is amazing. Congratulations over there. But those companies are looking at other ads and trying to work those in the process.
What parts of the creative strategy process do you think take the longest amount of time and have the least amount of money?
That's a great question. Yeah. I think that most people spend most of their time on creative research if they're doing creative correctly. I think if they're doing creative, I don't want to say incorrectly, but they're a little more junior, they'll usually start with the brief. In terms of what adds the lowest value, it probably is some of the tedious parts of briefing. It's spending time finding the exact asset that you want to use, spending time describing the layout of an ad, spending time gathering all the brand information that you want to share, especially if you're doing like UGC. There's some elements I think of editing, which I don't want to call them low value, but it's tedious work. Like you were saying with the brief, for example, that sometimes you just want to kind of do a loom or something like that. I think that's a great response. In terms of things that are maybe more controversial, I think that there are parts of what people do for creative research that are completely useless. And the biggest thing that people do is they'll just copy other brands' ads. And this is a major, major part of everyone's process. It makes things easier. You can give a reference. But if you want something to be really, really good creative, you want to custom tailor that concept to the brand that you're working on. Yeah, if you listen to Ogilvy, I've read all of this stuff. You should totally go read Ogilvy. He's the OG. Everything he said is still true today. He kind of invented this like blend of direct response and brand that still very much works. And if you listen to him, he would go so in depth into a brand. He would go and visit the customers of his clients. He would read every part of the history. He would learn the science of what the products were. All of these little details are where you can actually generate net new concepts that are going to be massive winners. What most people do is they go, oh, wow, I really like this ad that Rise made. I'm going to see if I can make the same thing. And they kind of co-opt the script for that brand. And I think that what happens when we have so many people doing that is you get a convergence in the types of ads that we see. So I'll give an example. 5 Reasons Why. Yes, it works for a small brand, but I promise you that after another year of 1,005 Reasons Why ads, people are going to get tired of them. They're going to stop purchasing. There are some things underlying it that make it effective, but you can't keep running the same ad over and over again across all industries, right? Because as a user, the consumer, you're scrolling through your phone, you're looking at ad after ad after ad, right? If you see the same thing over and over again for all different products, you're going to start to fatigue, right? You're not going to want to purchase from those things anymore. So I think that is the biggest thing that I don't want to call it low value, but there are higher value ways of going about creative strategy.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I just want to dig into that research process a bit more because, I mean, one thing that kind of resonates with me is the fact that when you're doing direct response, for me, it's more selling than marketing, right? So like, how do I divide those two things? So marketing is like you're trying to create a visual or a message and you're trying to pull people into it, right? Selling is like when you really empathize with the person and you address their pain points and you try and get in their shoes and in their mindset, right? And so it's funny because I come from a background of like doing a lot of selling over the years. And I think the way that you actually get somebody to buy something is you literally have to sit in their shoes. And the problem with AI is it's very good for collecting research together. So collecting the raw words of your customers together. But as soon as you ask it to aggregate it into some kind of a sentiment in general, it just flattens everything. It averages everything out so that all the extremities of the language that is used or the video clips where, you know, somebody's talking about a product is collected together. When you average all those things out, it removes all the humanity behind it. I don't know, the humanity is probably not the right word, but the humanness behind it, right? And so if I find it very difficult to get in the shoes of the consumer if you're relying on average consumer sentiment that is summarized by AI. And I think that part is the key bit that should not be automated.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think models right now for sure they average everything out, and that makes it hard to get empathy from it. I definitely think some hacks you can use are to try and get it to tell stories. Like, okay, tell me a story about a time that I like sold to this person. But I agree that you're going to miss a lot of characteristics. I really like that you point out that marketing is actually sales. Similarly, I had a sales background. Actually, even before I had a first real job, I was a tea salesman in a Teavana store in a mall. Teavana was like kind of like the Starbucks of tea, and they got acquired and closed. But I used to stand in front of the store in the mall with like a little platter that had teacups on it, and I would try and sell tea to just random people walking by. And that process is almost the same process that I use in advertising, because what I learned after 1,000 rejections, 1,000 iterations of getting told, oh, like, no, thank you. What I realized is you have to first relate to someone. So rather than just being like, hey, do you want a cup of tea? Like, oh, you like the Mets? I love your Mets hat. Oh, yeah, the game was great. I mean, it was bad. You know, I wish they won yesterday. Oh, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Oh, you drink coffee? Right. So you start to learn a little bit more about the person. And once you get to know them, you've made that connection. Then it's very easy to sell because all of a sudden you're a friend. And I think that's something that's hard to do in advertising because you always want to get straight to the sale immediately. But actually, all of the good hooks, if you watch what they're doing, they're actually relating to you, right? And that usually comes from some insight that's a universal story, right? There's some story that everyone who has whatever this problem is can relate to. And once you make that connection, then the selling becomes easy because now you're a friend. Oh, they get me. They understand me. And I think AI does tend to miss there because it's not really operating from an insight space. It's not really operating from an understanding of what a human is and like how they relate to people. But that's not to say that it won't get there. I do think that, you know, with proper trading and with some more updates, we'll probably get to a place where it's possible.
Yeah, I think the more custom training data you give it, the more likely it is to get to that point where it understands humans to be able to sell to them, right? And like, I don't know, one thing that we've been experimenting with recently is when we work with a content creator now, we'll try and get them on an interview. So we'll get them on a video call, we'll send them some product. So instead of getting them to record a general brief, we'll literally just get them to say whatever they want to say about the product on the video call. And then we'll turn that into a transcript and put it into GPT and ask it to make some scripts and then send it to them afterwards as a brief. And often, sometimes now we're even chopping the video call itself. And it's funny because, I mean, you get trained actors, right? And then you get content creators. The people who are just regular content creators, generally speaking, you know, their acting ability is variables, right? Sometimes it's amazing. You're like, well, this person is super believable, relatable. Like, oh my God, are they actually telling the truth, or is this just like a brief? And then you get the average content creator who, generally speaking, is not really a trained actor. And what's funny is what they say on a video call is usually very compelling. So we've been chopping clips from video calls and putting them straight. And that was just inadvertently happened, really. It wasn't that we went around thinking we were going to do that. It was like, let's interview the person to get to know them, to get their real experience, to make the briefs more tactile and more tangible and more real, based around their life and their anecdotal stories and things. And then it turned out that the video calls is where they're actually expressing themselves the most, because they don't, sneaky thing, we try not to tell them that they're being recorded until the end. And then right at the end, we say to them, oh, by the way, we've recorded the call, and is it okay if we use it for content? We'll pay you a fee. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, crack on, which is interesting. But yeah, no, just back to the training data point. So we're using transcripts from the video calls to then prompt against. So we'll get the transcript, put it in, write some prompts. And I think that's where it's going to get interesting. I think it's going to be around collection of data from people, right? I mean, it's kind of already happening with ChatGPT and Reddit. I mean, I know the number of citations, I don't know if you saw this, but the number of citations coming from Reddit went up from 1% to 5%, I think, recently. I saw someone make a post about this. So that means that ChatGPT basically references, every time it references a link, 5% of those links are now from Reddit. And we know that our customer research, a lot of it is done on Reddit and looking in the subreddits and all the wacky things that people say, right, that they wouldn't admit to saying in real life or on the camera. That's actually been used as context already for GPT, which is quite interesting. And that's a shift that happened in the last couple of months. So yeah, I think providing all this training data is going to be interesting. And there's some people building some really cool, interesting tools as well. I was at Madfest yesterday, which is a marketing conference in the UK, or exhibition. And there's a lot of people building tools based around like eye tracking data and visual hierarchy and the heat maps and like what are people going to look at. And they're doing a bunch of pre-testing before, you launch the ads. There's loads of stuff happening. It's kind of like all a bit of a blur at the moment because there's so many AI tools and I can't keep up, to speed with what's going on. Which I guess leads me to a question, like what AI tools, other than ChatGPT, what AI tools are you currently using in your day-to-day work? Like, what's your stack? What have you tested? What's good? What's bad? What do you hate?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, we've tested essentially all of the video and image generation. I mean, obviously 4.0 image gen and Google Gemini's image gen are the top tier for those. VO3 is obviously the best for video. I've worked on and tested a lot of the like video ad softwares, and none of them are quite there yet. There's always some editing that needs to be done. So at the end of the day, we usually will use just VO3 and the image gens, sometimes Runway for some specialized things, but we'll just recut them into something coherent. So we haven't found anything that can do full creative. I know some people swear by Arc Ads and Make UGC and those folks, but I have not seen as much success. Obviously, Icon is the other big one that everyone's talking about. So yeah. I'll say that because most of the things that we use are not going to be interesting to people. I think everyone kind of knows the main softwares. What I will say, we do a lot of that I'm proud of, and that I would highly, highly recommend other folks, especially agency guys that are smart like you, to do, is go get a Lovable subscription or Cursor or Windsurf, any of the like AI app generators, like code generators, and just build your own software. They're so good now that even without an understanding of how to code or technology, just using natural language, you can get most of the functionality you want. These things, they can integrate with the Meta API so you can pull data accurately. They can obviously write briefs. They can learn from your best practices. You can train them. You can essentially build any part of the creative strategy process using technology, and you can customize it for each of your brands. So you can upload all of your client data, every brief you've ever written for them, all of their top performing ads. You can reverse engineer everything they've ever done. And these apps can be made custom for whatever you're doing with them. Maybe you're also doing media buying and you need some insights. Maybe, you're also doing Google, right? You want to pull in their Google data. All you have to do is essentially say, this is what I'm trying to build. And I'll say the one key is to go step by step. Don't try and build a huge app at once. That's where everyone goes wrong. You're like, oh, this is this amazing, huge thing. It's genius. It's going to work. It's like, no, that's not going to work. Be like, I want this one tiny thing. Okay, make me an app that just displays CTR. Okay, now add purchases conversion value. Okay, now add ROAS. And you do it step by step and step. And all of a sudden, in a week, you have the greatest app that you could ever possibly ask for. And it's essentially free other than the API call costs, which is not going to be the case when you're paying some third-party provider that's built this for you.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to play devil's advocate here because, I mean, I'm very pro AI, right, and use of AI, but like part of me always thinks like, are we doing this to like no end outcome? What I mean is like, I'll often see posts on LinkedIn or Twitter where it's like, hey, check out my N8N workflow, comment this, blah, 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 to get this like workflow that I use to generate a zillion different creatives and like I've done zillion sales in it, right? And I don't believe 99% of what people are posting, to be honest with you. How much of this is like us just experimenting because it's a cool thing to do to like put the Lego blocks together and try and figure it out, and how much of it is yielding like a real world value right now?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think almost everything out there is fluff in the same way that everyone starts their LinkedIn post with, I made $500 million yesterday. Here's how I did.
Yeah.
The N8N flows, I have not found a lot of it successful. And what I think the reason is because they're typically just doing a single workflow. So what I mean by that is maybe they're just scraping from TikTok and then writing a brief based on that, right? Or they're just reading the performance insights and they're producing some kind of report. They're all isolated workflows, which is not really how people do work, right? If you're a creative strategist, you have your step-by-step process and you're going to go through everything. You're not going to click a button on 10 N8N flows and then be like, okay, now I have my output. What I'm suggesting is that you build your own app that maps perfectly to what you're already doing and just amplifies it. And so I think that the same reason that any software is valuable is how you can get value from the AI tools, because they can build software for you. But I agree that I think most of the AI tools aren't very special right now. And there's an influx of these kind of vibe coded tools that don't match your workflow, right? It's someone else's workflow that they're trying to automate, which is why I really suggest, like, even for you or someone who runs an agency, hire a real engineer, like have someone actually who understands coding and programming. It might feel a little expensive at the time, but the amount of time savings that you will get in building your own custom software is going to be, millions of dollars worth, essentially. So I agree that like most of it is kind of fluff. But you can build custom.
I do agree with you. I think the people who are claiming that they've got an agent that just does everything A to Z, it doesn't work. And I think what I've tend to find with e-com brands is a lot of brands have scaled off one concept, right? You get brands that do 100 million in revenue and they literally had like pretty much one concept that they scaled the absolute shit. So they had some like periphery creative around it, which is like, statics and offers and UGC and stuff. But like there's one core concept, the visual concept or something that made them stand out and be known for, or that was just working right and hitting the mark. And I think that building a AI around replicating that particular concept again and again and again. So really refining what you're using AI for just to make like one concept. I wish I had a clean example in my head, but it's hard for me to explain one. There's like a zillion different brands in my head right now. But if you can do that, it works really well. And you mentioned Arcads, and we do work with Romain from Arcads as well. We've got it. We're like software junkies. We have like more softwares than people in the team, to be honest with you. I think we have like 70 or 80 active software subscriptions at the moment, which is kind of insane. But I noticed that using the AI UGC avatar type things it does work for certain types of brands where the messaging has got to be done in a certain way, where it doesn't really matter if it's a real person or not. It's just you're just visually showing something or describing something. So it depends on the type of brand that you're going for. And there's one brand I have in my mind. I don't want to give it away because it's a client of theirs. But there's a certain type of brand that they work with that works really well with the AI UGC, especially with green screen in the background and the small avatar in the corner. And I think that's an example of like one concept where for that particular type of brand, that concept works. And so they're able to use that tool because that tool is able to produce that concept. And I think basically the point I'm making is you've got to just be selective of how you use AI, right, to make certain concepts. One thing that we've made recently that was useful, I made you get these pages where you repost content. You see people reposting content. So like, the bigger one that I can think of is it called Travel Pics? I think it's called Travel Pics. It's got like 25 million followers, right? All they're doing is reposting content from other pages, right? And they get sponsored by like loads of different governments across the world, their travel and tourism boards or whatever. But we actually made an N8N flow that allows us to repost content from a particular niche. So for example, if we pick a dermatologist and we'll go and like find a bunch of pages and we'll go and script the top content based on engagement divided by followers. We know it's good quality content. and then we repost it. And we've actually got back to work. And I'll tell you something, it sounds simple, and in principle it is simple. And I even started from a template. I didn't even start from scratch. But to get it to work has taken weeks of going backwards and forwards with the real developer, feedback rounds to get the right content and not get junk content, and to get it all in English. And yeah, it's like we've had what seemed to be a very simple task to do. I jumped into thinking this is going to take a few days. We'll just quickly spin it up and get it running. But to get it to actually work properly to the point where I can build a page that continuously grows itself, it's weeks upon weeks worth of work. I'm like thousands of dollars in at this point. And I think this is what ends up happening to get things to work properly.
Yeah, I think there's a deeper point here, which is that work that is done by technology, or that you're trying to get done by technology, has to be in its simplest form. Meaning, when humans do work, there's a lot of complexity and uncertainty and ambiguity that we can handle that you don't even think about when you're doing things, right? You're just kind of like, oh, okay, this thing didn't work, or there's this other context that's just sitting in my subconscious that, like, I don't even need to address this, but it's going to drive the decisions that I make. For example, this should all be in English, right? Without telling the technology, hey, everything needs to be in English, or if it's not, translated, right? That's something that you don't have to tell a human, right? It's just buried in their brain. They know that it goes without saying. There's all of these things that go without saying that people just understand when they're doing work, that you have to explain to technology or to an operator or to an AI. That over time, I think those things will get better. But with the current state, if you remember when OpenAI first launched, it was called Operator. This is the core problem of it, is that you needed to make tasks so simple for it to get it right, and then it would still get it wrong 50% of the time from something that you would never even think to have to tell a person because it was so obvious, right? Like, I was doing a bit of playing around on LinkedIn with Operator, and I was like, find me people that say smart things about creative on in e-commerce, and I gave it a few kind of like reference people, and it just the amount of times it would be like, hey, I found this guy in construction in like Oregon, and he's talking about how his work is creative sometimes. Like, is this what you're looking for? It's just like, no, like you would never have to tell a person that, right? Like a person would never come back to you with, hey, here's a construction guy in Oregon talking about creativity. You'd be like, no, I'm looking for creative strategy people in e-commerce. It's like very, very specific.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the struggles that we haven't overcome yet.
Yeah, but I think the more context you give ChatGPT, especially, I think a lot of people got in early days with ChatGPT, even though there's now like Gemini and like whatever, like a bunch of different other tools, Claude and things like that. I know, at least for me, all my context is built into ChatGPT. I've got so much context in there. I've been talking to it for so long that the switching cost is too high now. I literally cannot move and actually I tried to migrate my account to a new email address the other day, and I couldn't even do that because I was like, I have to split the JSON files into splice them up because there's so much data, and I was like, this is a headache. I'm just going to keep it in the same account. And so even transferring from one ChatGPT account to another was difficult. But I think, the more context we give it, the more it understands about what we're trying to achieve in life in general. I think the less of those kind of random things it's going to do, like finding that construction person who's talking about creative. Actually, I want to ask one question, because I think VO3, you brought that up. We started using it again. Started using it recently. The one limitation at the moment is you've got 8-second clips, right, with audio, and the clip quality is amazing. Like, the people seem fully legit, and especially I think even for a younger or older audience, like, you're not going to be able to tell the difference, right? I've shown the clips to people, and they're like, they think it's real, right? I guess my question is, like, how are you integrating it at the moment, given that there's only an 8-second limit on the audio?
Great question. I have not found their built-in flow to work at all. Every time you try to extend a clip into a new clip or add a new clip, like it won't have audio, or the quality is not quite there. So the main thing that we do is we treat each clip that we create as just an asset. So we're not trying to create full ads. We're trying to create maybe 1 to 3 second scene that we can stitch together to more and more scenes. So the same way that you would write a brief where you have, kind of block by block, scene by scene. That's the same way we use video. So we'll say, okay, we're trying to make this hook where X, Y, or Z happens. We know it's going to generate an 8-second clip. We only want 3 seconds of good footage. So what we're trying to do is we will prompt it like really, really specific, whatever that 3-second clip that we're trying to get is, and we'll just let it do its thing, and then we just cut off the sides. So there is still a lot of manual editing that's happening. But I have tried everything possible to get a full ad smashed into 8 seconds. It just cannot handle the level of complexity. And I think this is why you see all of these, the like Yetis doing vlogs or the Stormtroopers. I think that's why we're seeing those get popular. Or, Jesus walking around saying things, because those are the easiest things to make. The lower the complexity is of the clip, the more likely you're going to have something good. So we try and make it really, really, really low complexity, and we're only trying to get a few seconds of good footage. And then if we want something higher complexity, we'll just manually edit those like added features into it.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the one thing right now is you can't have character continuity, right? So you can't have the same character across multiple different scenes, and I think that's one of the biggest issues. But we found it's working pretty well for like making hooks. Let's say you've got like an 8-second car run of somebody introducing a pain point, and then you get into like the main ad itself. So I think that's quite a good use case for us. And then you can do some more creative things depending on the industry and things like that, where you can keep character or object reference where it doesn't matter if it doesn't match perfectly. So we've done some like ASMR type ads, and like we have like this jelly, and we just keep the jelly consistent across like all the different scenes, and that seems to work. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that 8-second limit is going to be lifted soon, and that opens up a whole new world of additional creativity on top of what we can already currently do, right? Which is already kind of insane. Yeah, it's hard to know where all this is going, because like at some point we'll just plug our ChatGPT into VO3 and we'll just like produce stuff. I don't know.
Just hands off, yeah. And making 1,000 ads. But I think what happens when that becomes the case is that the ad accounts all get flooded. And as you probably know, the bigger accounts, like there are limits to how many ads you can run. So I think if we assume there's a world in which even the smallest brands are basically maxing out their ad accounts, for what their ad spend is, CPMs are going to be much higher. There's going to be a lot more fatigue from people scrolling, and the cost of advertising will be more expensive unless Meta does something magical and figures out how to allocate spend, without kind of ruining it for everyone. But I think there is a risk of this technology, which you folks are talking about, that if all of the ad accounts get flooded with essentially infinite content, there could be churn from the platforms. And I mean that from the user side, like people might just be like, I don't want to consume all this garbage anymore. Or even from the business side, where, we've run 25,000 ads and like none of them are working anymore. Because at the end of the day, Meta's, it's an auction, right? Like their ad platform is an auction, and every brand is competing with every other brand. But the very highest level, like Meta has a priority order, right? As you probably know, if you have a big enough client, like there is a priority that you get internally. So what we might see happen is Meta is always going to optimize for how they can maximize revenue. Right? Obviously, they want as many small players in the market as possible. But if everyone's maxing out their ad accounts, in some ways they kind of have to choose. They need to figure out how they can maximize revenue. So we might actually see a short period of time where startups, like very small brands, are able to succeed because they can, blast out 10,000 ads in a week, and they fill up their ad account. And then I think after that small golden era fades, where just every single brand is launching and constantly, creating new things, the barrier to entry, even for creating a brand, is getting lower and lower. There's going to be way, way more competition. And at some point, I think Meta has to just say, okay, like we're serving, enterprise, or we're serving, people that make at least 10 million a year or whatever. Like there's going to have to be some cutoff, I think, at the lower level, because ultimately it's a competition, and it's going to make it prohibitively expensive when it's too much creative.
Yeah, see, I mean, I've got a bit of a counterpoint to that one, because I think that, you're saying that CPMs might go up. In the end, like we know the Meta wants to make more revenue, right? And how do they make more revenue? Either they get more users, they get each user to buy more stuff, right? So let's just assume that the number of users is static on any given day, right, or any given year, right? So let's just remove that particular variable. Then you've got like, okay, can I get people to convert more? Can I get them to buy more product? And the thing for me is, I don't know if you saw, there's a YouTube channel by some guys called the Door Brothers, DOR. Do you know them? No. You got to look up afterwards, right? They made this video called The Drill by the Door Brothers, and it's just like caricatures of like Donald Trump, Kanye West, like all like Elon Musk is in there. They've got like all these different characters, right, show up in this video, and it's just insanely entertaining. And it was all made with AI. I don't know. I don't know what tool they're using. It can't be VO3 because you can't have celebrities. But like, what I guess the point I'm making is, it was actually genuinely entertaining and captivating to watch. Like, I stopped and watched it. Like, whoa, these visuals are like things I've never seen before in my life. It was like a Travis Scott video, but on steroids. And I was like, it's very captivating. You should watch it, right? But it gives you a bit of an insight into where advertising can go as well. Because in the end, like, advertising has got to be somewhat entertaining for people to want to stop and watch, especially for videos. And I think the AI will get to the point where there'll be some AI generated creative that will outconvert, I don't know, human generated creative, right? Just because it's by its very nature, it's super entertaining. Like, I was compelled to watch that video. So I'm sure there's going to be ads that I'm going to be compelled to watch, right? And I know that my mother-in-law watches like AI cat videos where she's like, they're on a train or something, driving a train, and she still watches it because it's entertaining, right? Like, you still feel compelled to watch this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think that naturally what will happen is you just have more creative to choose from, which gives more opportunity for the algorithm to test different things, which means that it's a higher probability that the algorithm is going to find things that are going to resonate more with human beings. Because it's just a probability game, right? If on any given day Meta launches, I don't know, 1 million ads, and if tomorrow I can launch 100 million ads, well, guess what? I've got a higher probability of increasing conversion rate for Meta, which equals more money for Meta, more money for Mark Zuckerberg, and he can pay for all his like jiu-jitsu classes and all that stuff. So I think in the end, I think that's what's going to happen is I think CPMs may go up, they may not go up, but I think they'll just be more creative. And to your point, I agree that there'll be a flood of creative, but I think there'll be a mix of AI, completely AI generated, some augmented stuff, and then some human stuff. But I think there'll be some kind of an uprising where people want to like fight to bust out of the Matrix and the Truman Show and all this stuff and be like, fuck all this AI, like show me something real, right? Show me some, show me some damn stretch marks or something, like show me something that's like means something, right? Like, so I reckon that's going to come out as well as an emergence, and I reckon there's going to be a lot more live selling. There's going to be a lot more like, I don't know, content where it's proven to be super organic and like, I don't know, there's some way of proving that it's a real person, right? So I think in the end, people still do crave that kind of human connectivity. It's so hard to know where this is all going, but it's definitely going to change very quickly. That's definitely what I know. That's the only certainty I have is it's changing very fast, and it's going to continue to change even faster.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely agree with you there. I think, well, whatever happens, I mean, every couple of months we have something new that completely changes the game. And I think to the point that I was trying to make earlier, I do think that everything does get automated, right? There is going to be full automation of our space. I think that the strategy is going to be what's most important at the end of the day. And you know, maybe people don't get to a saturation point and they're going to keep consuming and purchasing. And, you know, probably there's definitely going to be some customers out there that are buying things. It's not like they're going away. So I think it just becomes about, for you at a brand or for your clients, like figuring out what is the exact thing that is going to win, what's going to beat everyone else. When everyone has 10,000 ads, your ad needs to be the best. So
I mean,
that we think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my thesis is that like human beings crave novelty, right? So when everything becomes the same, they try and create new things, right? And that's why we end up with monuments through history and like all this random stuff that shouldn't have really been built, but it got built. And I think the same thing will happen, you know, this next generation. There'll be all this AI homogenized type content, but we'll seek novelty, or we'll seek novelty either using AI or like not using AI. You know, maybe the whole medium of communication will change. Who knows? Like maybe we'll just be talking through brainwaves. God knows what. But like,
we have different medium. But yeah, Met is dead when we're all walking around in holograms and
literally
talking to each other.
I've visualized this life quite a few times, and in the office we talk about this, and we kind of like fantasize about what the future is going to be like, to be honest. And we're all imagining some AR headsets with advertising being back on billboards, but the billboards just being digital billboards. That's situational and dependent on how you're feeling and what you're looking at. And it shows you something in your vicinity that's like in your physical realm. I think that's where it's going to end up.
Oh man, just reach out and grab it. It's like, oh, we could tell you're thirsty right now. Here, buy our special water. It's like just grab it. We'll automatically take the credits from your account. Yeah,
and it's all the tech as well. Like, so I mean, I bought an Aura ring recently. I don't know if you know Aura rings. Yeah. I haven't switched it on yet, but so like you'll have your Aura ring, you'll have your like, you know, you'll probably have something that reads your blood sugar, something that, you know, is your heart rate and your mood, watching your face, because the AR is going to have cameras looking at your face and things. And it's just going to know what you want when you want it. And it's going to be so compelling to hit that conversion button that like you're going to be struggling not to press it.
Yeah, I just run out of money immediately. They'll
Yeah.
even probably have apps to track your finances. Like, okay, here's your cash flow. So you can afford this or you can't afford it. Yeah, just every decision made for you essentially.
Yeah.
But the sad thing is that, you want to have autonomy and you want to have free will as a human. But if you can imagine this world in which the tech understands everything about your body, it knows everything that's going on in your life, has all of the context, almost certainly it makes better decisions than you, right? Like you can maybe say, oh, I want to be long-term thinking or short-term thinking or whatever. Like there's probably ways of maybe modifying the way it makes decisions for you. But I think that one of the things that is also not talked about much, AI is a much better decision maker. Not right now, but once we get rid of all the hallucinations, it can handle more context than we can, right? There's going to be a point at which it far eclipses us in terms of memory and what it's able to use in like working memory. We have very limited working memory. Once this thing has working memory of your entire life and all of the information about your body in real time, every decision will be far superior to yours. And I think that's the point at which things get a little bit scary, where it's like, well, this thing's going to make all my decisions for me. I want to have autonomy and free will, but my life will be better if I just listen to the machine, right?
Yeah. I think that's where you're going to get the freedom fighters rising up, and I'll be there at the front of the army saying, "Well, come on, guys, Brett, come and join me, man. Let's just turn this AI machine off and let's just be human again."
It told me not to. I don't know what to do.
The robots are going to come and get us for saying this now. It's got to try. This is our record, so it's going to know what we've said.
Delete the recording. This can't go live.
Oh my god, man, it's scary times, to be honest with you. But I think when there's things changing, it always creates opportunity, and I think there's an abundance of opportunity ahead of us, and especially in the short term, before everything gets kind of integrated into a data layer that's connected to everything. There's loads of arbitrage to be had in lots of different industries, and that's why I'm kind of like the most excited about the next 5 years at least. And I think we've got some runway, right, where somebody said this to me actually on another episode. It's like the senior people in companies are the ones who control capital and make decisions. The junior people are the ones who like have lived and breathed AI from the day they were born, right, or whatever. And it taught about the people who control capital listening to the people who are capable to build the things. And I think that's where value is going to get unlocked in a big way. And if you can do both, amazing. That's like you winning. And I think we're probably at a rare age where we're maybe like in the middle. We grow up maybe. How old are you? I don't even know. How old?
I was born in 95.
Yeah, so we both grew up pre-internet and post-internet, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a bit more of it. We've got a unique. I like to think of ourselves as a bit of a unique generation where we've got pre-tech and post-tech, right? But now we're going to be talking about pre-AI and post-AI, and that's an even scarier thing, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I think about like my sister as a kid, and I keep thinking about how like the world they're growing up in feels to us like there's high tech because we had the pre-internet world where we actually went outside or whatever. But the difference between the iPad kids and the AI kids is going to be like a universe of difference, right? The people that definitely grow up with AI, like their brains are going to work in such a different way. Like, and I hope that it's better. I mean, I think it should be. I think there is some chance that, there's maybe a decrease in the critical thinking and there's an outsourcing of thinking because unlike other technologies, AI is a thinking tool, right? It's something that helps us think. Whereas the tech that we got, the internet was a connection tool, right? We were able to get information from different sources. We were able to connect with people we couldn't have connected with previously. So I think that was a boon. And I think that the outsourcing of networking, is not as much of a problem. I mean, we do have kind of the loneliness epidemic. We definitely have, I think, people on social media, they highlight their lives and people get a little bit depressed from all this thing. I think those are problems that come out of it. But, the outsourcing of socialization versus the outsourcing of thinking, I think the consequences could be a lot more severe. But I'm not. I believe that we're going to integrate really well and, we'll have robots doing all of our manual labor and we'll just get to have kind of a happy life where we get to be creative.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it unlocks time for human beings to just sit and do nothing and be creative, because I find like I'm the most creative when I'm bored, right? When I'm just sat in a room on my own just doing nothing, right? And that doesn't happen very often, by the way, like very, very, very rare. That's usually the time when I start creating things. And I think if AI can enable us to do that, that's pretty amazing. And actually one thing that you mentioned about just came top of mind. I was thinking about, do you know the game Roblox?
Roblox.
Yeah, so it's like loads of kids play this, right? So I'm thinking about the Roblox generation. Just forget calling them Gen A or Gen Alpha Beta, right? I think about them as like the Roblox generation. there's like kids making millions of dollars, right? Just making games in Roblox. And I think it's something like 40% of the users are under 13. And I just try to imagine that this is going to be the next generation. So if I'm going to have a career in e-commerce and I'm like thinking I'm going to stick it out for 10, 20 years, I've got to sell to the Roblox generation. And I'm trying to get in the mindset of like, how do they even make decisions? I can't even get my head around it anymore, you know? And so, yeah.
We're getting trounced. We're getting trounced. There's no there's no competing with that generation. I think they're also, people like to say that they're, you know, they don't want to work and all these things. I actually think they're hungrier even than we are. And like, I think of us as a very hungry generation. Like, I think, you know, we kind of call it, as you said, in between like pre-internet and post-internet, and all these like fortunes getting made and getting lost in our lifetime. So I think of us as very hungry. But I actually think that like the younger generation, they're hungry just in a different way. They're not hungry in the same, like, oh, my ego needs to be the biggest. Like, I need the most money and the most wealth and power. Like, I think they want to create the best things of all time. You can really see that even in, like, if you look at the Scale AI guy, for example, Alexander Wang, like he's one of those much younger guys. And obviously part of it was doing it for the money, but it's not in the same way. Like, he really wanted to just build something good. And he did that. And now, you know, he's kind of at the top of his industry at a very young age. I think that's what we're going to have to sell into, is this more creative generation that you know, they're hungry in different ways. And I think selling to that desire is going to be a very different game.
Yeah.
But fortunately, you can just interview some of them and you'll
I know.
you'll have all
Do
their secrets.
you know what? I'm gonna, now that we've said this, I'm gonna go find like the top seller on Roblox. I'm gonna like see what's going on inside their mind, because I just can't get my head around it, to be honest with you. But yeah, that's pretty crazy. Okay, I've got a question for you. Do you think, and this is something I've seen come up online quite a lot in the e-com space, do you think content creators should be worried?
You know, I think that what we're seeing is an acceleration of the value of expertise. So if you are the top tier of content creator, you don't have to be worried. And I don't think that they are going to be making the content of themselves for very much longer, but they understand what makes good content. So connecting that to the taste point I made earlier, they have taste, right? They understand the strategy. They are able to make content that is good. And so they shouldn't be worried. I do think that junior levels and mid-level content creators, they should be worried in that there's going to be margin compression. They're not going to be able to charge the same prices that they were charging before. And they're going to have to adapt and use technology rather than just getting a product and filming themselves. So the skills will change. And if they're unable to adapt and change, I think they should be worried. I think if they have a lot of expertise, if they're already at the top of their game, you know, they're superstars, right? And I think about this even with creative strategists. Creative strategists are like sports players, right? The very top tier, guaranteed you're going to make millions of dollars. You made it, you're crushing it, you're the top percent, you know, 50% of your ads win, everyone else, you know, you're getting 5 or 10%. Other than them, there's a lot of skill transfer that needs to happen to be able to adapt to all the things that are new, and they need to gain expertise faster. So I think that's also where we kind of get trounced by the younger generation. I think they're more capable of picking up expertise at rapid rates because they're going to have the AI tools and they're going to be used to learning with these AI tools. Whereas, you know, we're maybe slow learners. Even the fast of our generation, we're still going and like downloading books online, and we're like reading things manually and kind of going through things, dropping them into ChatGPT, getting the insight. These kids are going to have strategies that we can't even imagine, right? It's going to be, you know, baked into what they're doing. I do think that, especially for like our generation, older content creators, if they're not already in the top percent, they should be a little worried. But, you know, anyone will adapt.
Yeah, cream rises, right? And that'll never change. It doesn't matter what happens with AI, right? There's always going to be a natural hierarchy of value in the world. And if anything, it gets like even more asymmetric, and like top people, it becomes 0.1% rather than 1%. For me, I think that, I mean, similar kind of experience with us, right? So we work with hundreds of content creators, and it's always the top 1%. I'm not even saying 5%. It is literally top 1%. Like, we'll test 100 creators and we'll get like 1, 2 that really, really, really pop off. And often they can be the key difference between scaling a brand and not scaling a brand. We've had brands do like tens of millions of revenue just like off one creator, right? And like, no matter how many others we test, we're like, oh, we need to diversify, right? Because we don't want to put all the risk. We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. What if this person, you know, gets too like egotistical, or like, you know, they decide, okay, I'm in control here. Like, I'm going to ask for as much money as I can possibly get and kill all the margins. But like, it does happen. It happens like, and I've seen it in other ad accounts, or even ones that we don't work on ourselves. And it's quite consistent pattern. For me, I think that the key thing really is to incentivize them. So I know I know a lot of people I mean, TikTok's a bit different because there is the marketplace and stuff. But on Meta, I think a lot of people are still paying per brief. And I think that whilst that's fine at the beginning, I think you really want to pay the best creators that we've worked with. We pay them a percentage. So we give them a percentage of revenue or per sale or of ad spend. Ad spend is the simplest way because it's easiest to measure, right? Revenue can be a bit sketchy. And I think that is a good way of really incentivizing top creators. And we've had really good, successful relationships where they've generated multi 8 figures and they're on a percentage, right? And they've earned like good money, like way more than they can earn in a job. We've paid some of our top creators like $200K US in a year. And it blows their mind, right? But for us, it works. And they keep giving us content because we keep paying them. And the kind of wheel just ends up spinning. So what we found works now is like, rather than just pay people per brief as like a one-off, like give them some incentive. And naturally, I don't know why like brands do this. Maybe they're just brand owners need to remember, right? If they have equity in a brand, they have a feeling, right? It's like, hey, I own a part of this business. I'm going to push it as hard as I can. When somebody's given a brief and they're already paid a certain amount per brief, there's a limit to how far they're going to go. They're basically doing it based on reputation, based on will I get the repeat business or not. They're not really thinking, okay, how can I build my own mini business, right? How can I build my own little like a nest? And so like I think giving some kind of a commission or some kind of the upside to content creators, I think that's going to be a big move in the next, like I see a lot more people going to do that in the next few years. It's definitely working for us. I can see more people doing that, and that's where your elite creators should be paid a commission, and then maybe eventually spin off a brand under their name. You can do all kinds of things.
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned that because one point that I wanted to bring up in this conversation was incentivizing your creators, and specifically that anyone who is a sufficiently good creator or creator strategist will inevitably start their own brand. And I've seen so many of these folks who are like, oh, okay, I figured it out, like I cracked the code, launch a brand, and they scale to a few million in their first year, which it's just, I want to encourage more people to get into creative strategy and to get into content creation. There is this non-linear growth that you can have it as an individual that I don't think it's so easily accessible in any other field. There's really no barrier to entry. It's like picking up your phone and now are just going on Google VO, pay the $125, $250, whatever it is. Like it's going to feel, but if you get really good with these tools, there is unlimited upside and there is very, very limited downside. You don't get that in most other industries without some commensurate risk, right? In stock investing, right? Obviously you can get, all this crazy upside. Everyone likes to point to Bitcoin. Yes, you can get that unlimited upside, but you have equally matched risk. With content creation, there's almost no risk unless you have maybe some reputational risk, but you can just pump out content all day, every day. And, if you have your own brand, there's your upside. If you're working with an agency who's generous like yourself, get that incentive. If you're not working with someone who's already doing that and you're a content creator, ask for it. I guarantee you, like every person, brand side, agency side, they want to incentivize you because all they care about is winners. Like, as you mentioned, it can completely transform a brand, right? It could be the difference between being 7 figures and 8 figures, 8 figures and 9 figures. Like you can really, you can go 0 to 1. So I 100% agree. And I think if you have the confidence, you're good. You're one of these people working for Shabazz making $200K a year. Launch your own thing. Be their client. Venture is going to scale you, and you can just focus on creative. It's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the issues is that content creators don't really know or don't have visibility on how much revenue they're generating for a brand. And most of the time, brands won't really tell them, right? Because there's like a disincentive to tell them. But I think that's foolish. I think you should just actually be a little bit more open book about when things are working. Because, I mean, how do you achieve a certain behavior in people, right? The best way of doing it is validating good behavior, not by reprimanding bad behavior, right? So if you, and that's just like general, I'm become a parent recently, so I'm like thinking, well, my parent.
Congratulations.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, he's 18 months. He's 18 months old now, but so you should validate good behavior, right? So when someone, kid or anybody does something good, you want them to do more of that, right? And I think with content creators, if you say, hey, like your ad crushed, it did like, I don't know, 100K in revenue, let's just go and do that again. Oh, by the way, here's an incentive. I think that dynamic is where people want to be at. And I think that a lot of brands are kind of like, they just have like a budget for content creators and they're like, just go and spend it on 50 creators, thinking that 50 creators is better than one. I can tell you now, sometimes one creator is better than 50. I'd rather pay one solid content creator $200,000 a year than pay 50 average content creators, like whatever that is divided through 50 people. Because I know which one performs the best. It's worked for us.
Yeah. It points to something, another bigger point here. I always think of creative as there are three major components. There's quality, there's variety, and there's volume. And I think because the incentive for agencies was always to push for volume because they want to sell more ads, because they want to make more money, volume has been the thing that everyone has focused on. And what has been ignored is variety, and even more so quality. I think we've seen all of these ad accounts. Yeah, should we make 100 ads with 50 creators, or have like one good one make 5 ads? Well, you do want volume. Like, volume will get you performance eventually. But if you have 100 shit ads, none of them will work. And that is a possible thing that will happen, right? And the ad account performance is a power law. There's 80-20, right? 20% of your ads are making 80% of revenue. You want to do everything you can to increase the probability of getting your newest ad into that top 20% where they're scaling the account. So you need to focus on quality there, right? If you have no quality, then you're not getting anything. And quality is real, right? Like, quality, by the way, is whatever gets performance. So there's 1,000 different ways that you can do that. As you were mentioning earlier, for some brands, maybe it's avatar ads. For some brands, maybe it's VSLs. For some brands, maybe it's super branded content, right? You need to figure out what that is for your brand. But there will be some creator that is aligned with that is going to be able to pump that stuff out. And you should focus on finding that person rather than, kind of spreading all of your resources out through garbage, because then you're actually just throwing money away. So yeah, I think it's another really important thing to call out. Like, don't put all of your points into volume. Put some points into variety and put some points into quality, such that you're increasing the probability of getting older.
Yeah, I think the way to produce more volume, from my point of view, the better way of producing more volume is if you just work with different people. And so I see that a lot of the big brands work with multiple agencies, right? So some of the top DTC brands are working with 5, 6, 7 different creative agencies at any given point in time. They collect all that creative, they make a big backlog. I mean, you've seen this, working probably in your previous agencies. And then they just have a cadence of launching things every week, and there's never a shortage of creative, right? So when they're generating enough money, that's what they're doing. And I think that is a very interesting way of doing things, because you're getting different teams and different minds applying their own humanness and creativity and variation. And that in itself creates a variety and volume. And I think that is a better way of doing it, rather than saying to one person, hey, make me 1,000 ads, please. Because that one person is only going to have a limit to their creative juices in a given period of time, right?
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I would also argue that you want a lot of diversity in the types of ideas that you get made. So the people that you hire should also be very diverse. I don't necessarily mean like ethnicity is one part of that. And I think that actually does show in the ad account. If you have very different looking people in your ads, like, people tend to buy from people who look like them. It's just a fact. Like, everyone wants to kind of ignore that, but it's true. But you also want people that think very differently. So if you're selling, a toothbrush, for example, there's 1,000 different like niche identities that you can connect to brushing your teeth, right? You should go and hire all of these niche identities. You want someone who's going to think like a construction worker. You want someone who's going to think, from a real estate mindset, from a manufacturing mindset, from an e-commerce mindset. These are all different kinds of people. And sometimes they're not content creators, right? Sometimes you can actually just grab someone on the street who's like, hey, I know you really love brushing your teeth. Such a silly example. Like, everyone should be brushing their teeth all the time. But you get kind of the point that I'm making here. You want very diverse backgrounds, because you're going to get content that you would not have even imagined possible. And they're going to think of it naturally, right? They're not even going to think twice, because that's who they are. So yeah, I definitely think the easiest way to get variety is just hiring people who are very, very different. Which you don't see, by the way. Like, most brands, you have to tell this to. Most brands, like, they hire, the attractive young blonde girl, and that's every. There are 5 different young attractive blonde girls, but they're in all of their ads, right? Like, there's entire world of people, and to try and differentiate that in your creative. And obviously, like, AI makes it a lot easier now, because you kind of ask for that. But
I mean, this is where we have most of our media buyers, growth strategists, come from a STEM backgrounds. They're like engineering-y type people rather than like marketing creatives. So if you let them, and they're naturally the ones who know the numbers, and therefore can be like the voice of reason within the team from a logical point of view. It's like, hey, this works, this doesn't work, right? Which doesn't always tell the full picture, but their voice can be quite commanding, especially against creatives, because creatives are talking from a very subjective viewpoint, I believe. My hypothesis is. But then your growth strategists are very much like, oh no, numbers said this, don't do that, right? And I find this battle between the two groups of people quite interesting and entertaining, because they talk different languages. One has a strong voice and can sometimes squash the other one. The other one's like, oh man, this person doesn't understand what I'm saying. Like, let me just do it. And like, I think the creative strategists need a bit of freedom to go and sometimes experiment, and be given that time to be like, okay, I'm not going to do like a zillion briefs this week. I'm going to focus on one brief. I'm going to find the best content creator I can find, and I'm going to go work with them on it. And sometimes they need the space to do that. I'm a believer of that. So whilst we have, for example, like loose KPI targets around number of briefs, we use it as a secondary measure. It's like, okay, every creative strategist needs to do 20, 25 briefs a month, right? Okay, great. But guess what? If you did 5 briefs and your ads crushed, like nobody cares. That's amazing. Like the primary measure is, revenue, ad spend, all those things. So, and to your point about hiring different people, if you can't hire different people in your team because you can only hire so many number of people, just use your content creators as your creative strategists, right? So like find diverse content creators and just like pick up the phone to them, call them, speak to them. Like, I don't know why people don't do this. They just go on like a platform, they write them a brief, they send them the document, the person reads the document, they send their assets back. Oh, these assets are no good. Can you fix them? And everyone's in this like friction loop of just, I hate doing this work. Let's just get it done so I get paid my $300, $500, right? And so it leads to just like pure mediocre crap content that nobody really wants to do. And then when you ask for the second brief, they're like, oh, I have to go through this same churn again of doing all this like crap. So no, jump on a call with them, get them excited about the brand, send them the product, get them excited, explain to them why the product is useful in their life, and then let them use it for a week or two, and then go and call them again and be like, okay, what did you reckon about the product? Like, is it amazing? Do you love it? Like, did you show your friends? Like, how did you incorporate it in your life? Like, how do you feel about this pain point? Has it helped you? Like, what do you feel? Like, and just, what do you feel? And ask open-ended questions, right? And then you get the truth come out from people. And I think that is extremely compelling. And I think that's like where you get that diversity that you talk about, which is, you need those different voices to give their honest truth and true opinion. If you have like one brief, because you're like, oh, this script worked before, let's just do another zillion versions of this script and send them to different content creators because we should vary one variable at a time, right? And the thing is, that doesn't always work, does it? And I think that people have got into too much of a pattern of yes, apply the scientific method to creative strategy. Yes, everything should be based on a hypothesis, but it shouldn't always be, oh, change this variable, if this, then that. It doesn't always work. It doesn't always apply. It has certain use cases, but not always.
Yeah. No, you have to take big swings sometimes. I think to your point of the tension between performance data and just genuine creativity, I think that is where greatness comes from. Like I've noticed with creative strategists, especially that come from more of a design background, if you can teach them the media buying side, or even just give them the context of what the business is trying to do. Oh, hey, we actually don't really care much about profit this year. We're just trying to grow at all costs. And, we think we target women this year, like we're going to perform better. Like those little things that come from the growth strategy and that trickle down into the media buying, I think giving that little bit of context can help spark creativity. And likewise from the other side, like, creatives often do just have a sense of what you're on the ground, what is going to work, regardless of the data. And if you tie too closely to the data and you're only looking at what's working, you're not going to take those big wild swings. And if you think about performance, again, on that kind of distribution where you have this 80-20 power law, the thing that is already winning for you, the chances of you beating that and getting into some higher like maximum level is very low, right? You already have, maybe you'll get business as usual, maybe you'll get some performance because you know that angle works, whatever. But there's so much data that builds up and you get all the comments and everything, right? Once an ad is going, it's going. So you do need to break out of that. And I usually will call this like unlocking pockets of profitability. So if you can find a new audience to target, if you can find a new angle that connects and resonates with your audience in a unique way, you're going to unlock a pocket of profit. You're going to get a new peak. That's how you get new ads. You're not going to get a new winner by running the same thing over and over again, right? Like you might be able to support your account and scale a little bit and get to whatever your global maximum is of performance from that concept. But then you need a new winner. So yeah, like I think that tension is where you get a lot of success, where you have some media buyer or growth strategist saying, hey, here's all the performance context. But then you also have some relationship with your content creator. You're saying, hey, this is where we're at right now, but like we need a big swing. Like go kind of do your own thing. Like think about how you use this product in your life. Think about, what do you tell your friends when you talk about this product? I think that the combination is where you really see the most success.
Yeah, and I think where you balance this tension between the two different types of teams is top down, right? So if you have an exec team, CEO, CMO, who really understands this tension in detail and they have spoken to both sides and they hear both perspectives, I think that's where like a lot of value can be unlocked. I think the problem is when you've got, and I've dealt with both types, where you've got a CMO, for example, who's like, or a CEO who's like only a media buyer or only a creative person, right? If it's only a creative person, you end up with like branded visuals. They just care too much about how every single detail looks, and like, no, the brand needs to be perfect. Just too slow and it doesn't work. And they're not using insights to make the next thing, and they're spending too long doing shoots and stuff like that. If it's just a media buyer, they're not allowing that human creativity, and they're just biased on last touch because that's what Meta is focused on, right? So they're like, oh, that ad worked, let's just make that one again. And they just apply that simple logic to it. So I think where businesses are really succeeding is where they can understand that balance between the two. And you do need a bit of both. And with anything in life, right, as you get more experienced, if somebody asks you a question, like, what is the answer to this? Somebody who's experienced always answers it with, it depends. I can always guarantee that it's always circumstantial and nuanced. And if anybody tells you they've got the answer without saying it depends, they don't have the answer. So those people who are posting on LinkedIn saying comment, blah, 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 and I'll give you $1 million by tomorrow morning. Like, trust me, it doesn't work like that. The answer is always, it depends.
Yeah. And to that point, I think that if you want to get to the point at which you understand all the complexity and nuance, in order to answer questions, it depends, you should spend your time learning, not just ripping off what other people are kind of lying about on the internet.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to get caught up in the, and we both do it, right? I think it's easy to get caught up scrolling through and like reading what people are saying, thinking, oh, this guy built this huge business, like I'm going to be able to do the same thing if I just kind of listen to what he says. And the reality of it is that no business is built by copying someone else's template. Every single business is extremely different. Like, that as a founder, it's just, you're no one knows what they're doing. All of your experience, all it does is it reminds you of times when things worked and when things didn't work and what happened in that scenario. And you can maybe replicate some of the steps that you took to be able to get that success again. Right? But even every winning ad that you make, it's going to be completely different, even if it feels the same. Maybe they are both 5 reasons why and they work for 2 different brands. But the things that you're saying and the visuals that you're showing, it's completely different. Like, nothing wins exactly the same twice, right? There's the line that everyone likes to use is like, history repeats itself. And then the follow-up by maybe Tyler Cohen or someone is like, no, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. So, you can learn from things that you've done in the past, and that's where experience is valuable. But you still need to do net new things to really get new performance. You're not going to be able to just get away with copying other people. So, I think we're pretty aligned on that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Brett, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Any final words for like what's happening next? Like, what are you most passionate about? What you're working on right now?
Yeah, I really, really want the full automation of creative strategy, and I don't want just end-to-end workflows. I don't want one-off little pieces and parts of it. I want a full system that anyone can step into and can get a ton of value in, that will speed up their process, will produce better results. And in particular, I want to see more variety in ad accounts. As I was saying earlier, I think what happens as content creation gets cheaper and AI gets easier and easier to use, we see a lot of convergence, right? I've said this probably 5 times. There are so many things that you think will work over and over and over again, and they don't. And I want people to be more comfortable and more capable of taking big creative risks and doing that in the correct way. So yeah, that's just a little teaser of what I'm working on. But I really do believe in the automation of creative strategy. And I believe that it's not going to eliminate all of our jobs. It's going to make us much more powerful. You might have see us working on 5 or 6 brands. You give them the right tech. Now they're working on 10 or 15 or 20 brands, right? There's a lot of value, I think, for every player in the ecosystem.
Amazing. So if people want to follow up the conversation with you, where can they find you online?
Yeah, you can just go to my LinkedIn, Brett G. Friedman. You got to put that G because it's a very common name. So you'll see if you don't put it in there. So.
Yeah. You'll see us both trolling other people in the comments, right?
Absolutely.
Cool, man. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for the time, man.